let's dive more into this conversation, right? Okada possibly going to WWE but starting in NXT. I'm going to explain why. Again, I think it's a good idea. Yes, I agree with a lot of y'all when y'all said Okada is bigger than the NXT brand. 100%. Okada doesn't really need NXT. He doesn't need any developmental aspect when it comes to his style of wrestling. Now, when it comes to fitting in the WWE system, he will need some stuff to learn there because WWE system is different than everybody else's system. Him going to NXT, though, only benefit to help build up back the NXT brand to where I feel like a lot of people, and I think WWE wants to get it back to be where it used to be. Think about all the superstars that contributed to NXT when they first came. You got Samoa Joe, Shinsuke Nakamura, Kevin Owens, Bobby Roode. Like those guys, a lot of those guys were bigger than NXT, if we're being honest. Samoa Joe didn't need NXT. He was bigger than NXT at that point, but he went there because he helped contribute to build up the NXT brand to what we all loved in the black and gold era. Kevin Owens was popular in the independent scene as Kevin Steen. You could even argue maybe he was bigger than NXT. Did he really need it? Because everybody pretty much knew who he was. If you were a big independent wrestling fan, you were very familiar with Kevin Steen and who he was. And you think about all the Japanese wrestlers that started off in NXT, like Io Shirai, Kairi Sane, Asuka, Kenta when he was Hideo Itami, Shinsuke Nakamura. And out of all those superstars, Shinsuke Nakamura was the biggest one to come from New Japan. And to me, when he came to NXT, he was bigger than NXT at that time. Because I watched New Japan Pro Wrestling and I knew how big of a star he was in Japan. But you also have to understand, not everybody watches, Japanese wrestling. Some people are only familiar with American promotions, and some people are just strictly only familiar with WWE. Nakamura was able to reach a peak of popularity like a rock star, and he was able to build up his credibility and resume in WWE, in NXT, because, the crowd is just more of a casual audience when it comes to independent wrestling, when it comes to knowing stuff just outside of WWE than the main roster audience is. That's one thing that a lot of people always talked about, throughout the years, was that, when NXT was doing the black and gold stuff, it felt like an independent wrestling show because the NXT crowd was just so different than the main roster crowd. All those people that, came from TNA, New Japan, Ring of Honor, or wherever they came from in independent wrestling, and they went to NXT, they helped contribute to the NXT brand to build up that brand to make it feel like a third brand. All those people contribute to help make NXT the best brand in WWE for years. We all talked about how the black and gold era was goated and how NXT was pretty much carrying WWE through some of those dark times because the main roster was so bad. And it kind of seems like now WWE wants to get back to... What's the matter? Look at this dog. What's the matter? What do you want? What's the matter? This is Shaggy, everybody. This is Shaggy. Say hi. Okay, well, I'm going back to this video, okay? Okay. Yes, if you watch Okada and you've seen New Japan Pro Wrestling, you already know how big of a major star he is in New Japan. So yes, you have the feeling and you know that he doesn't really need NXT and you feel that he's bigger than NXT. That's understandable. But for the people who have never seen him wrestle or don't know much about him, they don't have that same type of feeling because they don't know about his resume. And if NXT is trying to hypothetically build back up their brand to get it to the popularity that it once was, somebody like Okada is only going to help that brand out. He doesn't have to be in NXT long. It could be about a year. Nakamura was in NXT for what? A year maybe? Kevin Owens came, he was in NXT for what, a few months? Like, not all these people have to be in NXT for some years, but Okada starting off in NXT would help the NXT brand out a lot, and it would help him, get just more familiar with WWE system and how things plan out there. Like, I don't think it's a downgrade for him to go to NXT. NXT is still a WWE brand at the end of the day, even though they call it a developmental system, like, it's still a brand at the end of the day. It's still WWE. If you watch WWE and you watch NXT, you're still going to see Okada there. Now, he won't be on the main roster, but I just feel like it's beneficial to the brand to help build it back up. And it's beneficial for Okada a bit to get familiar, like I said, with the system of WWE because WWE system is a different beast. We all know that. So I think it's very smart for a business perspective to have Okada start off in NXT. And it could be beneficial for, people to maybe want to go back to the NXT brand who signed with WWE because that was one of the main reasons a lot of people like a Samoa Joe or Bobby Roode, when those guys signed to WWE, they wanted to start off in NXT because NXT had great talent, great competition, popularity, like everything you could ask for. So those guys signed like, you know what? I wouldn't mind starting off in NXT, even though I pretty much may not need it, but starting off there could be really good. And look at all those people, how they thrive so much in NXT. Like, I think it could be really, really good on both sides.